what I believe will be an interesting session. Each presenter will speak for about 15 minutes. And after that, we'll take question and answer. So please put in the questions into the Q&A box, and then they'll be taken after the presentations. I now have the pleasure to call on Dr. Fofack to take the lead in his presentation, Facilitating Trade under AFTA. Thank you, Doctor. Dr. Fofack, please.
Shall I start?
Yes, you can start, please.
Very good. I think, quite frankly, we'd like to really thank you for organizing such a timely event and for associating the African Export-Import Bank. And as you know, the bank is very committed to the AFCFTA process, has been working closely with the African Union in that regard. And it is fair to say that it's something that we fully support, and I've been working very hard to make sure that it is delivered accordingly. And previous speaker actually emphasized a lot on a number of issues related to fiscal adjustment cost, the issue of manufacturing, the issue of financing, and all that boils around financing, most of it, if we exclude the issue of education and training, also to certain related to finance. I think trading on behalf of Professor Benedict Orama, I think our president, would like to really thank the Nigerian Economic Outlook Forum for organizing this event, which, as I said earlier, it's very much timely. And trading on the agreement started earlier this month, exactly 2 weeks ago. An entity, both sovereign and corporate, that stand to benefit the most are those with first, good understanding of the agreements, those who have gone through it. And second, those most able to identify and understand the emerging growth opportunities and deals which are emerging. Therefore, I think the 2021 edition of National Economic Outlook Forum on the overarching objective, African Continental Free Trade Area, understanding opportunities is not only timely, but also very relevant and germane to the continent, especially to key African and Nigerian financial services industry. But even before, as you said, Moderator Chair, even before the formal steps to deepen trade under the AFCFTA, we had the financial services already on that continental drive. And in addition to EcoBank, which now has offices in almost 30 African countries, we've seen Nigerian banks also moving in that direction, particularly well-capitalized Nigerian banks, which emerged from the successful banking sector reform and consolidations 15 years ago under Charles Soludo, have been expanding their continental footprints, as you mentioned earlier, Chairman. And UBA is one example with footprint in almost 20 countries across the continent. But the AFCFTA, which has been touted as a game changer, because it has potential to integrate the African market and boost productivity and competitiveness as corporate take advantage in terms of scale, could also, at the same time, accelerate the Pan-African drives of Nigerian banks as well as other African banks. Trade integration, which has accelerated the process of structural transformation and diversification of growth, and prompted spectacular success in other regions of the world, easing trade investment flows, shifting FDI compositions, and facilitating development and that development of regional value chain could actually create huge growth opportunities for the financial service industry in the coming years and decade. Boosted by increasing efficiency of financial services in the clearing and of cross-border transactions and investment, regional value chains have been key engine of economic transformation in other regions of the world. And the AFCFTA, which establishes the largest trading bloc, will actually is expected to help Africa achieve the same result and development outcome, expanding opportunities, growth opportunities, even more in different sectors. Greater integration of market and easing of cross-border transactions under the AFCFTA are expected to increase capital funds and attract FDI as well as ADI, African Direct Investment. And we are expecting that it will boost consumer spending by about 1.4 trillions. And the same will apply when it comes to intra-African, which will increase by almost 35 billions within a decade of AFCFTA implementations. So in essence, these are tremendous growth opportunities for the banking sector, which could capitalize on market integrations and increasing economies of scale. But growth opportunities in the banking sector will also arise from an acceleration of financial inclusion made possible by two concurrent factors: rising per capita income as a result of expanding employment opportunities in the booming labor-intensive manufacturing sector, but also the transitions of a large percentage of African populations into the formal economy. This is very important in terms of potential growth for the financial service industries. Still, growth opportunity for Nigerian banks will also come from two other sources: rising domestic savings, but more importantly, in the Nigerian case, risk mitigations and improved risk management through geographical and sectoral diversifications. And as you know, across Nigeria, the expansions of growth opportunity in the manufacturing sector will reduce the risk exposure to the oil and gas, currently about 30%, but also to global volatility and commodity price cycle, which have been sources of record balance of payment crisis and liquidity constraints as recently witnessed under the COVID-19 pandemic. If you look at, for instance, the following graph, you can see clearly that during the second quarter of 2020, the pandemic downturn had the worst effect in that quarter. When you contrast manufacture against commodities, there was a decline of 19% in manufacturing export versus 38% of commodities, reflecting both the conjunctions of both the volume and the price, which is not always the case when it comes to manufacturing. The long-term deterioration of commodity terms of trade. Yes, growth opportunity for the financial service industry under the AFCFTA are huge and will expand even more over time. However, realizing this opportunity hinges on overcoming several challenges: trade investment information gap, trade financing gap in the range of $80 billion, $81 billion, as well as infrastructure financing gap. What has Afreximbank been doing to actually help its member countries meet these challenges? I think it's fair to say that we've been doing our part, providing direct financing, advisory, as well as drawing on technological innovation and solutions to prepare our member countries better as they enter the continental integration reform. And the bank has already disbursed $20 billion in support intra-African trade, and we expect to do even more during implementations going forward after commencement of trading. The bank is also directly financing its intra-African trade champions to support the growth of cross-border investment and asset diversifications of growth sources and export. And through its Fund for Export Development, the bank is accelerating the diversification of export through equity participations, and as well as drawing on its correspondent banking services to make sure that we strengthen the confidence and counterparties in the settlement of international trade transaction for extra and intra-African trade. But as an innovation bank, Afreximbank is also investing heavily in technological solutions. Its Pan-African payment settlement system will make it possible for intra-African trade to be settled in local currencies, thereby reducing the foreign currency contents of African trade, and in the process, address the issue of recurrent risk liquidity constraint that we saw in Nigeria, for instance, right after COVID, or before that in 2015-16, after the end of the commodity super cycle. At the same time, the digitalizations that the bank is drawing upon will have the potential of actually increasing financial inclusion by onboarding those in the informal sector, informal cross-border traders. That's another growth opportunities for the banking and financial services. A trade information portal will actually improve the quality and availability of trade informations and the identification of original supply chains in the process. And finally, I think the bank launched its customer diligence repository platform, MANSA, which has the ambitions of becoming the central repository for customer due diligence in Africa, which is timely and will actually emerge as a cost-effective solutions to emerging challenges associated with growth of cross-border financial transactions. To close, Chairman, I think over the last 2 decades, the continental drive and journey embraced by a growing number of African banks, Nigerian banks, has been fostering financial development and economic integrations, stimulating competition and efficiency. These institutions were ahead of the continental integration curve. In our view, will almost surely play a lead role during implementation of the AfCFTA, facilitating transactions, mobilizing savings, and allocating capital fund toward productive investment. At the same time, transforming and improving risk management in a continental setting, either through risk sharing or aggregations to enable it to be carried by those more able and willing to bear it. Afreximbank Chairman has been supporting and working closely with African financial institutions to transform African trade and accelerate diversifications and development over like 3 decades. The AfCFTA, which significantly expands the scope of growth opportunity, provides the ideal platform to do even more on that strategic partnership for Africa economic transformations. It's fair to say that Nigerian and African banks can always count on Afreximbank under the leadership of Professor Rama, who has been a great champion of the African financial service industry, as you know. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Doctor, for this very interesting presentation. And I'm sure there will be a number of questions that will come after that. You have clearly identified some of the opportunities that AfCFTA presents, to Nigerian financial institutions. You have also identified some major constraints, that can hinder the realization of these opportunities. In addition, you identified some initiatives on the part of Afreximbank aimed at facilitating trade under AfCFTA. But most importantly, you've offered, as Afreximbank has offered its hands of fellowship to Nigerian financial institutions to help them realize the potentials that this great trade integration opportunity would afford. So thank you very much for this presentation.
Oh, it's my pleasure.